Welcome to the House of Truth. Today, today we're wrapping up our series on the Acts of Moses. We're going to talk about the death of Moses. We've been looking, we've been looking at Deuteronomy. We've been looking at Deuteronomy, and now it's mostly a big speech of Moses. In that big speech, we looked at three main parts of it. How, first of all, how to experience the blessing of God, which can be summarized as seek you the first of God, kingdom of God first, and things will be added to you. Avoiding the curses of God that will totally undo all the blessings and then make things even worse than you started out if you continue down that path. And the big key to avoiding them was to not get your eyes on the blessing, off the blesser, and on the blessing. Then we taught. Then we finished up his speech with these warnings, his final warnings to Israel, and basically, and told him how they would, warned him, gave him the final warnings, told him what happened if they ignored the warnings. Told him the secret to heeding his warnings. The main thing that they had to be warned about was guarding their hearts, so it won't be in a condition to get led away from keeping from living a life that's pleasing to God, that's being about the business of God. And end it with this bit of hope that even though if they ignored his warnings, and after all these things came upon them, they experienced both the blessings and the cursing, and they said the blessing was better, they could return to God and God would return to them because he's gracious and kind. He also, and then last week, and that was sort of the end of his big speech. And then God gave, which took up 30 chapters. And then we looked at how God gave him a song to teach Israel, the song of Moses last week. And Deuteronomy 32 are the lyrics to it. And they can be summarized as this. This is from God saying, I'm not the problem, you are Israel. I was good to you. I've been good to you, and you are going to rebel against me nonetheless. And the song is a witness against the song was to be a witness against them about this, and how God would not overlook iniquity, and if they continue on that, it would certainly bring destruction to them. And that fact, in fact, the only thing that kept him from doing so, why making them remember it's completely forgotten about, was what would the Gentiles think? And he said he would use a foolish nation to provoke them to bring them back to him. And Paul said that foolish nation, Shaul, the apostle Paul, was the Gentile believers. That people that were that would anger them, and that people that were not a people at their time would provoke them to jealousy, was the Gentile believers. And we looked at some reasons why the Bible calls Gentile believers a foolish nation, and found that the source of wisdom and understanding is the Torah, which they have largely through their history been ignorant of, often from not having access to what people call the Old Testament, the Tanakh. And then later, by the time they did have access, being told you don't need to read that, that's been, so on and so forth. But that's where the wisdom and understanding come from. Israel, in like manner, became foolish and lacking understanding because they had been given this, but they rejected it. So God was going to treat them as they had treated him. But he told the righteous Jew and Gentile alike to rejoice when the destruction of the wicked come, because it's their salvation. And that's kind of how the song ended. Today we're talking about the death of Moses. That song was the last thing he was given to do before he died. God gave him, as we saw, a number of tasks before he died. And this was, he actually announces his upcoming death quite a while back. One of them was conquering the Amorites, etc. So today, that was his final task. So today, we're going to look at his actual dying. And next week, we'll have a little supplement, if you will, kind of a summary of the entire series. I'll discuss that maybe perhaps a little later. Now, in Deuteronomy 3, verse 24 through 29, we're going to read the following. Lord God, you have begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand. For what God is there in heaven and earth that can do according to your works and according to your might? I pray you, let me go over and see the good land that's beyond Jordan, that goodly mountain in Lebanon. But the Lord was wroth me for your sakes and would not hear me. The Lord said to me, let it suffice you. Speak no more to me of this matter. Get you up on the top of Pisgah and lift up your eyes inward, westward, and northward, and southward, and eastward. And behold it with your eyes, for you shall not go over this Jordan. But charge Joshua and encourage him and strengthen him, for he shall go over before this people. He shall cause them to inherit the land which you shall see. So he abode in the valley over against Beth Peor. Okay. As part of his big speech, he's reminding them, hey, you're provoking me, caused me not to be able to go over. And it lets him know he pled with God for God to change his mind, but God would not do it. Now, that goodly mountain he's referring to is Jerusalem, the place where God's name would be placed on. And notice the land beyond Jordan to the west of it, Lebanon to the north of what's just west of him. Okay, so that goodly mountain would be in the south, relative to where he was. So God's going to let him see it. But he's not going to let him go over. Joshua's going to lead him into the land, not him. And notice this about this place. Notice it's the top of Pisgah. Pisgah is a peak, but there's some other names for the same area. We'll discuss those later to clear up confusion, because people sometimes don't realize how they're related. But Pisgah is this peak there, and it's high up. But let's be honest, if you go there today, you can't see the whole promised land. God is going to give him a vision up there supernaturally, or perhaps going to take him up higher, into the air, like if he's in an airplane, a helicopter with a pilot, if he could see it, perhaps. So, but what he's going to do, he's going to look there and he's going to see. Now, I want to draw your attention westward. Well, that's what's across the Jordan River, the western promised land. Northward, Lebanon, in that area, as we mentioned, perhaps some of Bashan and up that area too that they conquered previously. Southward, Jerusalem, down there. But what's eastward from where he is? They're around the east side of the Jordan River. Eastward is that part of the promised land that's east of the eastern promised land they've conquered so far. As we shown in a previous lesson, we shown that the land promised to Abraham included the land that was given to Esau, that God would not give to Israel because it was given to Esau. Land given to Lot's children because Abraham's father had died, and Abraham raised him in his brother's stead, so gave him an inheritance in his brother's stead. Ishmael's land, so on and so forth. And what was left was the land promised to Jacob. And that land, again, we saw the boundaries of it. And he goes over to the Euphrates River. And to put this in perspective, modern Israel is about the size of Jordan. The land after Joshua's conquest was about twice that size. But the entire thing that's going to be shown Moses is 3 times that size, roughly about the size of the state of Louisiana here in the United States. So he's going to show him that part over there between what they've conquered and the rest of it over to the Euphrates River. That's why it says eastward. Now, in Deuteronomy, we continue on Deuteronomy 31, 1 through 4, 1 through 4, where we start seeing what God said being carried out. And Moses went and spoke these words to all Israel. He said, I am 120 years old this day. I can no more go out and come in. Also, the Lord has said to me, you shall not go over this Jordan. The Lord your God, he'll go before you to destroy these nations before you, and you shall possess them. And Joshua, he shall go before you as the Lord has said. And the Lord shall do unto them as he did to Sihon and to Og, kings of the Amorites, and to the land of them whom he destroyed. Okay, so Moses is telling him three things here. I'm not leading you over. Joshua's leading you over instead. However, God is still with you. And it was God who went before you in the eastern promised land when you conquered the kingdoms of Sihon and Og. When you brought the judgment of God upon them. Remember that Malach Adonai, the angel of the Lord, and that pillar of cloud by day and fire by night, went before them and did all the heavy lifting. That's why they were able to take out nations that were bigger, that had bigger armies than them, bigger people in the armies, and more, and 7 nations to their 1. Okay, this is why they're able to do this, because their part was to go behind. What he left them, what they could manage, they go behind and take care of that. And he's telling the same process is going to be. You don't have to be concerned. The same God's going on. The same God's hadn't changed. He's going to go before you. And so there's a lesson there for us in this. Because people get their eyes on a man and not on the Lord. And there's a change in leadership. Perhaps a pastor dies or just retires, or whatever the case is. And people got their eyes on the man and don't and act like it's all over. But when your eyes are on God, that doesn't concern you. Yeah, you may like the guy, you may miss the guy, so on and so forth. But when your eyes are on God, he hasn't changed. He's not leaving you. He didn't leave when the man left. Okay. When Moses is no longer be with him, God will still be with him. And he's already appointed someone to take Moses' place. So we need to keep that in mind in our own lives. Now in Deuteronomy 31 verses 5 through 8 read the following. And the Lord shall give them up before your face that you may do unto them according to all the commandments which I have commanded you. Be strong and of good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord your God, he it is that does go with you. He will not fail you nor forsake you. And Moses called to Joshua and sent him in the sight of all Israel. Be strong and of good courage. For you must go with his people unto the land which the Lord has sworn to your fathers to give them. You shall cause them to inherit it. And the Lord, he it is that goes before you. He'll be with you. He will not fail you nor forsake you. Fear not, neither be dismayed. Okay, I want to draw your attention to a couple of things. First one is you've got to do your part, as we said before. God helps those who help themselves in the way Benjamin Franklin literally meant that. The Malach Adonai goes through, but leaves behind them things they can handle themselves. And remember, if they don't quit handling their part, the Malach Adonai would quit doing his part, okay? So they have to do all according to the commandments. He's going to leave them in a weakened state where they can manage them, and they got to take care of the rest. Now notice what they're concerned. They're be encouraging. They perhaps some fear here again as we went forward. Definitely said they had fear, huh? Fear not, nor be dismayed of them. Why? Because God's still with them. He goes with you. He will not fail you nor forsake you. Now look at what he says to Joshua. Same thing. Be strong and of good courage. The Lord does go before you. He'll be with you. He will not fail you nor forsake you. Fear not, neither be dismayed, instead of be afraid of them. Okay, dismayed, don't, like we're so afraid you don't know what to do. And 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 it reminds him about the promise of the Lord. We remind the people about the commandments. See, Joshua felt at the same was subject to the same fears and so on and so forth as the people he was leading. And sometimes we put people want to put leaders on some sort of pedestal or something. They want the leader to somehow be above feeling afraid. They're looking for the leader to act like they have it all together. They're confident and portray all that and so on and so forth at all times. But the leaders can feel these same things the people can feel. They have the same concerns and they need the same encouragement. And so Moses gave it to Joshua. Now, as we continue on in Deuteronomy 31, we read this in verses 14 through 15. Here's what we see. And behold, the days approach that you must die. Call Joshua, present yourselves in the tabernacle of the congregation, and give him a charge. And Moses and Joshua went and presented themselves in the tabernacle of the congregation. And the Lord appeared in the tabernacle in a pillar of cloud. The pillar of cloud stood over the door of the tabernacle. Okay, so now it's why do this? To make it official. Personally, I'm not a big fan of ceremonies, but they're needed for a lot of people. I will need a ceremony to make it official, and certainly you want witnesses, and you want the people in charge. If someone else is going to be put in charge, them letting everyone know that they're in charge, which is what they're doing. So he calls in this little ceremony to bring the congregation and the tabernacle of the congregation, present them. So they go there. And now, notice that pillar of cloud. Remember, it stands normally over the place of the mercy seat. But now, when the Lord's meeting with someone in front of the tabernacle, it moves to where they are. And that's what's gone on here. So now, once again, reminding everyone, Joshua is in charge after Moses dies. And Joshua's going to hear from the Lord himself that I may give him a charge. The old leader who retired or died or whatever. Whoever they appoint their replacement or whatever can hear from God just like they can. They're not Moses, the man of God, but so is Joshua. Oh, and I should say Yahshua, because that's his name. Joshua's one way to transliterate, maybe I should say, the Hebrew Yahshua into an English word, Joshua. Now, Daniel in Deuteronomy 31, verse 23 to 26, read the following. And he gave Joshua the son of Nun a charge and said, "Be of courage and good, be of strong and of good courage, for you shall bring the children of Israel in the land which I swear to them, and I'll be with you." And it came to pass when Moses made the end of the writing of the book of the law in the book, till they were finished, that Moses commanded the Levites, which bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, saying, "Take this book of the law and put it in the side of the ark of the covenant, for the Lord your God may be there for a witness against you." Okay, so notice Joshua, same words, starts with the same words Moses said. Summarize it, confirming to Joshua that Moses wasn't just speaking out of his own mind or something. Be be strong and of good courage. Exact same admonition. Same mission. You're going to bring the children into the land I swear. And same promise. I will be with you. Now, he made an end of writing all the words of this law in a book. Notice it's not finished till the day of his death. 40 years in the writing. Remember the first commandments given were concerning Passover in Exodus 12 before they ever got here. 40 years have passed. The last were concerning concerning the king, which we read, the law of the king. Now he finishes writing everything. And there are no other words, as we showed before. There's nothing else spoken on the mountain. It says Moses wrote down all the words that were spoken on the mountain. Now the whole summary has been put in there. And it may be a witness against you. Put it in the side of the ark of the covenant. Now, it's a little unclear if they built something on the side, they could slide it in, or perhaps the Hebrew could mean inside the ark. Okay. But either way, it's going to be there, this scroll Moses wrote with all the commandments. And all the commandments in it as a witness against them. Why? Well, we'll see here well, that'll become evident in a minute why a witness against them. But no, actually, that's doing that. Because remember, God's already told them they're not gonna pick the blessing, they're gonna pick the cursing. And a witness that they did this. They made an agreement with God. The agreement's been written down. It's been kept. And be a witness they didn't keep it. Now, in Deuteronomy 32, now we're going to jump ahead for a moment here. Deuteronomy 32, 48 through 52, we read about what happens next with Moses. And the Lord spoke unto Moses that same day, saying, get you up to this mountain, Abarim, unto Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab, which is over against Jericho, and beyond the land of Canaan, which will give the children of Israel for possession. And die in the mount whether you go up and be gathered to your people, as Aaron the Ur died in Mount Hor and was gathered to his people. Because you trespassed against me among the children of Israel at the waters of Meribah Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin, because you sanctified me not in the midst of the children. Yet you shall see the land before you, but you shall not go in the land which I shall give the children of Israel. Okay, so notice, remember, it's called Pisgah, the top of Pisgah earlier. Notice Mount Abarim and Mount Nebo. Mountain and mount. Well, today we might say this Mount Abarim's a mountain range. Nebo was a mountain, and it had more than one peak. Pisgah is the name of the tallest peak, and it's in the land of Moab. Remember, now Mount Hor was Mount Hor, if you remember, was before they crossed over the, I want to say the Yabok. It's not the Yabok, the Arnon River into Moab. Okay, so Aaron didn't make it into the eastern promised land at all. Moses has, but only that part that really formerly it was not formally part of the Canaanites' land. But this is where he's going to see, behold the land of Canaan. Now, and then he's going to die when he goes up. Just similar to what had happened to Aaron. But why? Same reason as Aaron. Remember, Aaron suffered the same punishment as Moses. Because when Moses got angry and struck the rock, instead of obeying the commandments, Aaron had heard God give him the commandments to speak to it. Aaron was staying there when Moses grabbed his stick and Aaron did nothing to stop Moses from doing it. Therefore, Aaron got the same punishment as Moses. And we showed this last week also. This is the way it is with God. If you see someone else sinning and say nothing, you are as guilty as they are. If you see a sin, if you see someone doing wrong, and don't report it, the world says don't be a snitch, whatever. God says you're as guilty as they are. If they murdered someone and you say nothing to the police, you are guilty of murder is what God's saying. We showed that, and we showed this an example concerning idolatry. So, you know, so the people that saw the man do this had taken action. Only the man would have died, but because they didn't, his family had seen him didn't do it. They died as well. So this God was against not just the man now, but against those his family, those who saw him and did nothing about it. So that's why he's writing Aaron didn't get to the promised land because of what you did, because he did nothing. So you're not going to get to either, or go into it. I'm sorry, I should say, but he is going to let him see it. He's going to show him that kindness to let him see it. Now, in Deuteronomy 33, verses 1 through 5, we see perhaps among the last acts of Moses, he's going to bless the children of Israel, similar to how Jacob blessed the children of Israel right before he died. Remember, we talked about the final days of Israel, how he framed the final days of Israel, his descendants, with his blessing, and indeed their history up to that point. And Moses is going to do something similar here. So we begin here. This is the blessing where the man of God blessed the children of Israel before his death. He said, the Lord came from Sinai and rose up from Seir unto them. He shined forth from Mount Paran, and he came with 10,000 saints. From his right hand went a fiery law for them. Yea, he loved the people, and all his saints are in the land, or in the hand, I'm sorry. They sat down at their feet, that everyone shall receive of your words. Moses commanded us a law, even the heritage of the congregation of Israel. He was king in Yeshurun when the heads of the people and the tribes of Israel were gathered together. Okay, remember, Yeshurun, sort of a nickname for Israel, and Jacob and his descendants Israel. When they're doing right, means upright one. Okay? So God was king in there. And remember the words that they said to Samuel, when they demanded a king. They've not rejected you, they've rejected me. When the judges, God ruled as king through the judges. Okay, he was their king. Well, Moses was this first of these judges, which we showed before. And so that's how God is king in there. What's the inheritance of the kingdom of the Jacob? The law, the Torah. Okay, that's their inheritance. Above everything else, everything else to get comes from from keeping it. Now he came from forth in Sinai. Remember, Sinai was where he gave the law. Rose up from Seir unto them. Remember, they passed through Seir the first time. They had to go around. The second time, passed through it. Went by on the King's Highway when they went to Kadesh Barnea and failed there and went to 38 years of wandering. He shined forth from Mount Paran. Okay, that's whenever they were sent back. The exile was over. So he's with the Lord's never left him, forsake him. And notice when he came, particularly with Sinai, when he came from Sinai, okay, he already had 10,000 of his saints, tzedakим, righteous ones, but saints a good translation. So 10,000s of people from before Moses ever went into the promise, ever went to Mount Sinai, had already been made righteous through faith, like Noah had. It wasn't just that small people; it was tens of thousands. And they, and very few of them were circumcised. Descendants of Abraham would be it, And those 70 went down to Egypt. I mean, we're talking 100, maybe 200, who knows? But 200, because this is before all these people get destroyed by plagues afterwards. Okay, so he has So never was circumcision a requirement to be a saint or the law. But they were, so these saints, these righteous ones were with him when the fiery law went for them, the people. Now they're saints in his hands if they keep that law. And or more accurately, they keep the law if they're saints, they're righteous ones. We've talked about that before. Okay, the law shows whether or not they're righteous or not, by whether or not they keep it. They sat down at his feet, so he sent them and gave them this law, and this law is their real inheritance. Because it will make them a wise, understanding people. Will give them all those things God promised if they'll keep it. It'll cause them to rise above other nations and so on and so forth. It'll cause them to have sickness be taken out of their midst and so on and so forth. It's their inheritance more so than the land. They get the land because of the law. And they get to stay in it and prosper there because of the law. And so on and so forth. Now we're going to start looking at these actual blessings, and we're going to look at these tribes, who he blesses and which tribe and what they get, and what the blessing is. And he begins with here in Deuteronomy 33 and verses 6 through 7. Read the following: Let Reuben live and die not, let not his men be few. This is the blessing of Judah. He said, Hear, Lord, the voice of Judah, and bring him unto his people. Let his hands be sufficient for him, and be you a help to him from his enemies. Okay, first of all, we're going to start with Reuben's very short blessing. Live and die not, let his men not his men be few. Well, first of all, why is live and die not? Well, remember, Reuben was kind of unstable as water, as Jacob put it. So most likely seduced, wasn't the brightest bulb by Bilhah, Jacob, one of Jacob's concubines, or no, actually wives. They've been a handmaiden to Rachel, and we talked about before, kind of like mistress, like servant. Okay, and the penalty for adultery is death. Well, Reuben, don't live and not die. You've been forgiven, and let his men not be few. And not just be carrying this, not just him living under this all the rest of his days. He's going to continue, but he's not going to get the inheritance he could have gotten. It was his to lose the firstborns. It's like a prodigal son returning to the father's house, and the father doesn't then make the older brother give up part of his inheritance to give to the younger brother. The younger brother got his inheritance when he demanded, and he squandered it. He gets to come back to his father's house, but he doesn't. But his inheritance is squandered. Well, it's the same here with Reuben. The birthright and the blessing, as I've explained, are two different things. Notice the blessing of Judah. Judah's getting the blessing here. And remember, the blessing is the right to rule after the father's gone. Reuben's the firstborn. Judah's the fourthborn. Simeon and Levi also. They plotted, were deceptive, and killed a man who really was trying to do what was right. He had done wrong, but he was trying to do things that were right, and a bunch of innocent people as well in their vengeance on this one man. So it's not fit to be leader. Goes down to Judah. Judah, remember, is the one who said, let's not always show himself to be the leader. Hey, let's not kill Joseph. Let's sell him to the Ishmaelites. Remember, Reuben had planned to sneak back at night and get him. Wasn't up front with his brothers at all. Wasn't confronting them like Judah was. And Judah, in that regard, protected his brother Joseph to some degree. So he acted like a leader. Didn't do anything to get disqualified, so that blessing came down to him. And now, hear the voice of the Lord. The leader needs to hear the voice of the Lord. He's with his people. He needs his hands be sufficient for him, be strong. A leader needs strength, and he mostly needs help from the Lord from his enemies, okay? And remember, all the kings come from there, from Judah, David through Messiah. Okay. So that's why they're, and Jacob had said, let the scepter not depart from Judah. Okay, so remember, and these things that Moses say are going to be in line with what Jacob said. They're not going to be contradictory in some way. They're supplementary. They're complementary, I should say. They either reinforce or the thing or tell you that and give you a little more information. Now, Deuteronomy 33 verses 8 through 11 read the following. Of Levi said, let the Thummim and Urim be with your Holy One, whom you did prove at Massah, with whom you did strive at the waters of Meribah, who said to his father and mother, I've not seen him, neither he acknowledged him, neither knew his own children, for they observed my words and kept my covenant. They shall teach Jacob your judgments, and Israel your law. They shall put incense for you and whole burnt offering on your altar. Bless, Lord, his substance, and accept the work of his hands. Smite to the loins of them that are against him, and of them that hate him, that they rise up not again. Okay, so remember the Urim and Thummim, those go with the high priest, the Holy One. Now, why at Meribah? They did not strive at the waters of Meribah. Well, other people were out rebelling against God. Levites weren't doing it. Okay. Or I'm sorry, they weren't up there provoking Moses. I should say. I'm sorry, they weren't provoking Moses at Meribah. Get us water. And at Massa, we're also water. There's a problem with water as well. Where the first thing, and Moses put the. They weren't there, but also, they also this thing with the golden calf. When Moses said, "Who's on the Lord's side?" They all answered, and they observed his word and kept the covenant. And the covenant said, "You said those who worship idols must die." And it says, if you see even we learn over this, even your mother, your father, your friend is like you love like your own soul, so on and so forth, trying to drag you into worshiping other gods to kill them. And that's exactly what they did. They killed their own parents, their own siblings, their own children who were involved in idol worship. Remember, those people were naked, and that's how they knew who they were. They were naked, and the ones that got their clothes on in time or whatever, God sent a plague and killed the rest. Okay. But they obeyed God's commandment. Therefore, they set the example of keeping his commandment. Therefore, they're going to be the ones to teach it. They're going to teach Jacob the judgments of God and Israel their law. And they're going to have this business with the priesthood. And God's going to accept the work of the hands of Levi to go to the priest and the high priest. That they're going to do this, so that they alone can make atonement for Israel and carry this out. They alone can intercede for Israel in this manner. They can be mediator between God and Israel. They alone. So this is now their inheritance. We looked at the inheritance of the Levites, and their inheritance wasn't land. They're scattered in cities. They don't even have any land around there except for a little area to put their horses and whatever. That goes out about a kilometer or 5/8 of a mile from the city, from the wall of the city, roundabout. But that's just, like maybe their milk cows, whatever they need. But mostly for the horse and things, they got a place to put those animals, those grazing animals, outside the city walls. That's it. They don't have any villages. They don't have land. There's no land of Levi. This is their inheritance instead. So now Moses has blessed them. Reuben, because he's in this order. Reuben, because he's the oldest. He starts off with this. Judah, because he's going to be the ruler. Out of him, ultimately, the king will come, the head of the political system. Levi, the high priest, is from him, the head of the religious system. Okay. So that's how he begins with these three. And this part here about smite, ironically, I mean, they got this position. They got this position by acting with their sword, but now they're not to use a sword. And that's why God is gonna smite to the loins and them that rise up against him, and then them that hate him. God is their protection. They don't need their sword no more. God will protect them. And we saw how he does that through Israel, had them in the middle, everyone else around them, and so on and so forth. And when they march the same sort of configuration. But God is ultimately the one protecting them. Now, we continue on Deuteronomy 33 through 12 through 17. And we looked at three of the children of Leah, and not as we might expect when you see the other two. Instead, we see the children of Rachel here. And here's what we read. Of Benjamin, he said, the beloved of the Lord shall dwell in safety by him. The Lord shall cover him all day long, and shall dwell between his shoulders. And of Joseph, he said, blessed be the Lord of his land, blessed of the Lord be his land, for the precious things of heaven, for the dew, for the deep that crouches beneath, for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun, for the precious things put forth by the moon, for the chief things of the ancient mountains, for the precious things of the everlasting hills, for the precious things of the earth, the fullness thereof, and for the good will of him that dwelt in the bush. Let the blessing come upon the head of Joseph, upon the head of him that was separated from his brethren. His glory is like the firstling of his bullock. His horns are like the horns of unicorns. With him he shall push the people towards the ends of the earth. They are the 10,000s of Ephraim. They are the thousands of Manasseh. Okay, we'll start here with Benjamin first. Benjamin's the youngest son, but notice he's next. Why? He had nothing to do with putting Joseph in the pit, okay? He's the only innocent one in that regard, except for Joseph, of course. He was born in Jacob's old age and really lived raised godly and lived godly. His whole life didn't fall in the kind of patterns that his older brothers had where first Jacob has to get rid of the idols out of his camp. God tells him there's idols in the camps, and his brothers are among those with the idols. Of course, so is his wife Rachel, and probably Bilhah, because like mistress like maidservant with them. But Benjamin's none of that, and Benjamin generally has shown themselves to always be loyal. Although not faultless. The tribe is going to stick with Judah later when the kingdom divides, and so on and so forth. Okay, now this thing here that the Lord's going to carry him. Notice the beloved of the Lord. He's beloved because again he's lived righteously. Not as a sentence, the man himself we're talking about. The son of the right hand, a picture of Messiah, beloved of the Lord. He's going to dwell safely in him. The Lord's going to cover him all the day long. Or he's going to dwell safely by him, I should say. Okay? So the beloved of the Lord is going to be by him. The son of my right hand is going to be the son of God's right hand, dwelling safely by him, protecting him. He's going to cover him like a hen covering his wing, like an eagle fluttering over its nest, a hen bringing the chicks under its wings, as Messiah said. Same ideal all day long. And he shall dwell between his shoulders. Benjamin's going to dwell between the shoulders of God, figuratively speaking. It's like a papoose, as Native Americans had, where they had a thing, the women would carry the baby on their back between their shoulders. Well, that's something similar where the father may carry a young child on his back between his shoulders. Okay, so that's what it means to dwell. So he's under total protection and care of God. Now Joseph, he's going to be blessed of the Lord, be his land. The land, notice the land of Joseph, which is two parts of Ephraim and Manasseh. And notice it's all about crops and good crops and everything growing there, okay? The fresh things. And the goodwill of him that dwelt in the bush. Of him that dwelt in the bush is talking about when Moses met that fire, that burning bush. The Melech Adonai who spoke out of the burning bush. We showed that before, okay? When God spoke to the burning bush, that fire was the Ruach Hakodesh, the Shekinah, kind of a version of the Shekinah, the glory, the visible manifestation of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Spirit of God. But that burning bush represented Messiah. The wood representing man, the fire representing God, man and God together, burned but on fire but did not burn. Well, this is the goodwill of him is towards Joseph. Okay, he's blessed. Of course, the blessing that come upon the head of him and the top of his head. Why? Because he's separated from his brethren. Okay, and remember this has already happened in Joseph's life. The man, his brothers, he was separated from his brethren, and what happened to him? He ended up with far more wealth. That's what all this farming wealth is referring to wealth here. Really, chief things of the ancient mountains. Remember, God talked about brass and gold being, and iron being there, and so on and so forth. Okay. All right, so the fresh things of the lasting hills, again, things you mine out of there. So he's going to have all these good things because he was separated from his brethren, and Joseph, and the man, was raised second to Pharaoh, far richer than all the rest of them. Okay, so he's going to be far richer than the others. That's his blessing here, and also notice he's going to be strong too. The firstling of his bullock. Okay, the first is, the bullock, often with animals and people too, the firstborn is stronger than the ones that follow. And that's what it's referring to there, okay? And his horns, now unicorns, remember King James, that's the Old English word for a rhinoceros. His horns are like the horns of rhinoceroses. Horns figure power. He's got wealth, he's going to have power. And he's going to put with him. He's going to push the people to the ends of the earth. Those who come against him, he's going to be able to push away. Of course, this is all dependent upon him keeping, as long as he's walking in the ways of God. This is the way things are going to be. That command. Remember, their inheritance is the law. And notice there are 10,000 of Ephraim and thousands of Manasseh. Remember, Manasseh got the double portion of Joseph's children. Joseph has the double portion here, by the way. Notice he's got two, Ephraim and Manasseh, and Manasseh has twice as much as Ephraim. All right, he's got part on the east, on the eastern promised land, part in the western promised land. But Ephraim, notice, has the tens of thousands. Speaks of Ephraim being the political leader. Indeed, when they split, Samaria, the kingdom, Samaria, the capital of the northern kingdom, is in Ephraim. Okay. So we've got this wealth, but the center of power is Ephraim. The center of the wealth is Manasseh. And also if you would see some of these things line up, Benjamin's between Judah and the land of Joseph, as he is sandwiched here as well. Now let's continue on here in Zebulun, in Deuteronomy 33, verses 18 through 19. Of Zebulun, so we've covered the two children of Rachel and three of the children of Leah so far. And of Zebulun, he said, "Rejoice, Zebulun, you're going out, and Issachar in your tents. They shall call the people to the mountains. They shall offer sacrifice of righteousness, for they shall suck the abundance of the sea and the treasures hid in the sand. Okay, so so those Zebulun and Issachar are blessed together. They're tied together. They're connected together. And notice going out in your tents. What to speak of? Traveling. This speaks of traveling. Their blessing involves traveling, going, moving around. They'll call people to the mountain. They're going to offer sacrifice. Shall offer sacrifice of righteousness. They're going to call people to go with them to Jerusalem, as the mountain is referring to, even though they do not know this at the time Moses is given this blessing. Now, notice where's their wealth going to come from? The abundance of the seas and the treasures hidden in the sand. So they're going to have to be out and moving about for their business, going out. Remember, this the area of Galilee is part of it, the Sea of Galilee. Well, you have their fishermen. They're going out. How to make their money? The abundance of the seas, bodies of water, and also perhaps speaks of the Mediterranean Sea. Treasures hidden in the sand. Okay, first you may think of pirates, the hidden treasure. But the idea is there's things buried there. There's a connection between them and the ocean, and the seas and the shores of the sea. Okay, setting up ports, things like that. Okay, that's what they're going to do. And they're going to have to be traveling in their business. And of course, if you're going to sea in a ship, you're going to be gone from home at long periods of time, sometimes, whatever. Okay, but that's how they're going to get their wealth. Now that is two more children of Rachel, the two youngest children. So we covered Reuben, and now the four youngest children the four youngest children of Leah as well, and the two children of Rachel. Now, as Moses continues on with this blessing in Deuteronomy 33, 25 through 20 through 25, we read the following. And of Gad, he said, blessed be you that enlarges Gad. Oh, blessed be he that enlarges Gad. He dwells as a lion and tears the arm with the crown of the head. He provided the first part for himself because there was a portion there, and a portion of the lawgiver was he seated. He came over the heads of the people. He executed the justice of the Lord in his judgments with Israel. And of Dan, he said, Dan is a lion's whelp. He shall leap from Bashan. Of Naphtali, he said, O Naphtali, satisfied with favor, full with the blessing of the Lord, possess you the west and the south. And of Asher, he said, let Asher be blessed with children. Let him be accepted of his brother. Let him dip his foot in the oil. Your shoes shall be of iron and brass, as your days, so shall your strength be. Okay, now we're talking about these last four of the children of the handmaids, and it starts up with a handmaid of Leah. It ends with a handmaid of Leah, and puts the two handmaidens, the children of the handmaid of Leah, Zilpah, at the beginning and at the end, and the two handmaidens of Bilhah Bilhah, the handmaiden of Rachel, in the middle. It's kind of a little bit of an interesting way of doing that here. And what's he say about them? Well, Gad's the first of those. The Gad has been given first place, I should say. Remember, Leah didn't have her back. I should have brought this up. Zebulun and Issachar were born. Leah had laid off bearing for a while, and then later she had those two. Now, but in the meanwhile, she had Gad and Asher, she had through her handmaiden, but she had response to Rachel having her handmaiden marry Jacob and bring up children to him. So it's the oldest son of Leah who gets first recognition here in this set of these handmaiden children. Again, Leah preferred above Rachel, a consistent process consistent pattern we have seen. I've shown it to you before. Consistently. Because God, Jacob favored Rachel, but God favored Leah because Leah was faithful to God in always names of children, everything shows she was leaning upon God, and Rachel was always not leaning upon men and getting involved in superstition and idolatry and all kinds of things like that. You know, well, if I had to marry one of those two, I definitely married Leah. So Rachel may have looked better, blah blah blah, but Rachel appealed to the flesh, but Leah appealed to the spirit. So her children are always first. Now let's read this blessing here. He that enlarges Gad, that'd be God. Okay, blessed be him. Gad dwells as a lion and tears the arm with the crown of the head. All right, just going to tear up anyone who gets in his way. Speaks about a military aspect here of Gad. All right, you know, perhaps excelling in the army and that kind of thing. He provided the first part for himself. Okay, again, we saw before how the spoil was divided. Okay, again, speaks of him getting the spoil because in the portion of the lawgiver he was seated. He's also got these positions of authority as judges, not the judge, the supreme judge, but the judges under Moses. Many of them are going to come from Gad. Okay, execute judgment. Now Dan is like him. That lion's whelp. Notice Gad's a lion. He's a lion's whelp, a cub, a young lion who follows. You know, who's learning from the fully grown lion. Okay, he's also got this military aspect. And he leads from Bashan, that northernmost area, that area where the Daily Golden Heights are today. You know, he's also portion is to excel in the military. Now Naphtali has something similar as well, but a little bit different. A little bit different. He's gonna get the blessing of the Lord and favor. That's how he's gonna come to possess the south, the west, and the south. Okay, and of course the west and the south, references directions he's gonna expand in. Okay, he's gonna expand westward towards the Mediterranean Sea, southward. Of course, that'd be towards Jerusalem or towards Gaza. Okay, but he's going to give you sort of an idea what it's referring to there. But he's not doing it necessarily by might, the way Dan and Gad are, military might. It's more like blessing, favor. So he's going to have favor. So someone else is going to fight and give him stuff, that kind of thing. Because God, now Asher, the last of the last of the children of the handmaidens by birth, blessed with children, be acceptable to his brethren. Okay, he's tenth in line. All right, he was 10th in line. He was 10th in line at the bottom of the group that missed out on getting the blessing. I'm sorry, on the birthright. Okay, blessed with children. Let him be acceptable to his brethren. His brethren, are accept him perhaps, and therefore he's going to also be able to gain things. He's going to dip his foot in oil, of course, some of olive oil, but there's kind of a reference there to luxury. Okay. There's sort of a reference there to luxury or wealth as well. Notice his shoes are brass and iron, as opposed to soft foot, hard shoes. And remember that word brass there. We talked about the Hebrew word can mean copper. Iron and copper together make brass, what we think of as brass today. Okay, so his shoes are hard and bright. And though so are as your days, so will your strength be. He's going to be one of the people who die, who are strong all the days of their life. Okay, and perhaps these things speak of athleticism. Of course, he's going to be in he's going to have to fight with everyone else, but athleticism to a great degree. Okay, and be acceptable, not looked down by his brothers. Okay, because perhaps he's not so much a military man and so on and so forth, but the day's world, an athlete, that sort of thing. But he's going to be tough. He's a tough man. That's the point of shoes and iron. He's a strong man, but not necessarily a cunning military man. Now, there's something missing in all this, and we're going to talk about that next. And we're going to start here. We're going to start here and see it in Genesis 35, 22 through 26. This is something no one ever seems to notice this. So we're going to bring your attention to it today and explain why. So let's begin here in Genesis 35, verse 22 through 26. Read the following. It came to pass when Israel dwelt in the land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. The sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simeon and Levi and Judah and Issachar and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel, Yusuf or Joseph, Benjamin, and the sons of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid, Dan and Naphtali. The sons of Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, Gad and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob that were born to him in Padam Haran. Okay, again, and notice the sandwiching once again here. Leah, but these are Leah and then Bilhah. But we have the two wives, the two sisters, and then the two handmaidens next. Okay, they're in that order. But notice how Leah is Rachel's tied there with Leah, Naphtali. And their birth order, of course, was these four. Then was Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. Then Dan, Naphtali. Then Gad, Asher, and then finally Joseph and Benjamin. Now we looked at this. Remember, Reuben's going to live. Levi's inheritance the priesthood. Judah's going to rule. Issachar and Zebulun, the buns of the sea and traveling. Joseph, bountiful land of wealth. Benjamin, God's going to watch over and take care of him. Dan and Naphtali. Well, this military aspect with Dan under Gad and Naphtali, Naphtali, who's gonna get this favor to get to the east and west, gain possessions in the west and south. And Asher, the tough man, but also with the luxury. Okay. Again, you might think of professional athletes today. Might be a good pair. But what's missing? Simeon. Moses never mentioned Simeon. He mentioned. You could even argue he mentions 12 because he mentions Joseph's two brothers, two sons. I'm sorry, Ephraim and Manasseh. In the way they kind of replace Simeon, because you count them two instead of Joseph, you count them two, you end up with 12. Well, why is Simeon not mentioned? Because there's a connection to the promised land. it's a connection to an inheritance. Now, here's what we read in Joshua 19, verse 1. The second lot came forth to Simeon, even to the tribe of the children of Simeon, according to their families, and their inheritance in the inheritance of the children of Judah. There was no land of Simeon. They had cities with villages, not scattered among all. The Levites had cities scattered among the 12 tribes. We looked at that before in their inheritance. And just the suburb, the land, a kilometer or 5/8 of a mile, roughly around the city. Simeon just had cities only in Judah, and the villages, unwalled villages that were around those. Okay, there is no land of Simeon. Now, Simeon and Levi had lost their inheritance because, I mean, we're to be scattered among Israel because of the cruelty that I mentioned earlier concerning that young man who, yes, him and their sister had fornicated together, and he tried to make things right, and instead they lied. They lied. They plotted. They ultimately killed him, and a bunch of people had nothing to do with it in the city he was in. And this is when Jacob was trying to settle in Shechem, and he had to leave. It's the only time he ever tried to settle down somewhere, and he could not stay there because of the trouble they caused him. They caused his father to be scattered, to wander place to place. So he said the same would happen to them. Now, Levi redeemed himself by getting a different inheritance, the inheritance of the priesthood. So he's mentioned. Simeon has not redeemed himself at all. So he has no land of Simeon. And he doesn't have a substitute for it. A substitute for it is perhaps even better than the land, like Levi did. Therefore, Moses does not mention him in this blessing because the children of Israel are about to go into the promised land. But that's not the end for Simeon. We're going to look at that this curse that's on him to be scattered is not forever. And by the way, I've mentioned before, Kiriot, Iscariot means from Kiriot, is a city of Simeon. Judas Iscariot was from Simeon, and the chief priests were all from the tribe of Levi. Just as they plotted against that man that was trying to do what was right, the young man, so their descendants plot against Messiah. But this curse in Simeon's not forever. And we know this because Ezekiel 48, verse 24 through 25. By the border of Benjamin, from the east side to the west side, Simeon shall have a portion. And by the border of Simeon, from the east side to the west side, Issachar shall have a portion. Okay, we went over this a little bit before. Perhaps someday we'll go into it in more detail. But when Messiah reigns, we talked about the tribulation, the kingdom. The land of Israel is going to be divided in strips that run east to west. The west side for all of them is the Mediterranean Ocean. They're not going to be patchwork quilt like they were in the days of Joshua in dividing of the land. They're divided completely different. And one of the great differences is that curse, Messiah has redeemed Simeon from the curse. He has lifted he that knew no sin became sin so that we might be seen sinless before God. Cursed is everyone that hangs on a tree. He bore the curse, not just for our sin, but also the consequences of our sin. Restoration in the world to come, in the world of his reign. In this life, God is not mocked. We will lose things, and we will not get them back, just like Simeon. But God will restore them to us because of what Messiah did in redeeming and Simeon's been redeemed. Therefore, and Simeon now in the reign of Messiah will have a portion just like the rest. Now we're going to now Moses. We're going to look as Moses wraps up his blessing here right before he dies. There is none like the God of Yeshurun, who rides upon the heaven in your help, in his excellency on the sky. The eternal God is your refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. He shall thrust out the name from before you, and shall say, destroy them. Israel then shall dwell in safety alone. The fountain of Jacob shall be upon a land of corn and wine. Also its heavens shall drop down dew. Happy you are, O Israel, who is like you, O people saved by the Lord. The shield of your help, who is the Lord, who is the sword of your excellency. Your enemies shall be found liars in you, and you shall tread upon their high places. Okay. Yeshurun, upright one, the God of the upright one. Who is like him? Of course, the implied answer is nobody. Now, notice upright one tied to, again, doing what's right in God's eyes. It's when you're upright. We've seen it over and over again. Remember, their real inheritance in the land we just discussed, it's the Torah itself. That is their title deed to the land. That gives them the permission to live in the land, and the days that are in the land be as days of heaven on earth. So when they're doing what's right, God's going to help them. He's going to be their refuge. He's going to be underneath them as well as above them and around them. He's going to thrust the enemy out from before them and shall say, destroy them. Remember, the Melech Adonai can go before them and do what they cannot do themselves. They're going to go behind and do the part he left for them that they can manage. And when it's all done, Israel's going to dwell in safety alone. I mean, he's not going to be enemies. There's not going to be any enemies around the land of Israel, none in the land of Israel. That fountain, remember, corn is King James for grain. Remember, that land is like the land where I grew up in the northwest Arkansas, where I grew up, land of hills and valleys. And when it rains, a lot of it just goes down and drains off, drains off rather quickly. So the land's very dependent upon the rain coming in due season. Well, it's going to do that. And they're going to drop down dew. See, in the summer, you don't want rain, you want dew. Okay? In Israel, you pray in the fall for rain, for snow in the winter. Why snow? Because that's what replenishes the aquifer, particularly the Sea of Galilee. Rain, the latter rain in the spring, but you pray for dew in the summer, because dew gives moisture to the crops to sustain them, but isn't so much water. It's detrimental to their growth and development. God is in control of the weather. And when Israel is living upright, these things are going to happen to him. And who will be like them? The people saved by the Lord. Remember, an ethnic group raised above all their ethnic groups. And their enemies will be found liars unto them. Who is going to, those who lied against them they're going to overcome them. They're going to tread them upon their high places. You're talking about their places of strength and fortress. As I've said before, the Middle East is scattered with the ruins of invincible empires. And many of these, they came against Israel. Well, their enemies, when Messiah reigns, this prophetic here, it's talking about when Messiah reigns particularly, anyone who will not accept peace will be destroyed. And their cities will be left a ruin. And and Israel's going to walk across them in the process. Now we continue on in Deuteronomy 34, verses 1 through 6, and we and we and we and we're and we're and then we read about Moses actually dying. And Moses went up to the plains of Moab, unto the mount of Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is over against Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead, unto Dan, all of Naphtali, the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, and all the land of Judah to the utmost sea, and the south, the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, unto Zoar. And he said unto him, This is the land which I swore unto Abraham, and to Isaac, and to Jacob. Say, I'll give this, I will give unto you. I have caused you to see with your eyes, you shall not go over there. So I go over to there. And Moses, the servant of the Lord, died in the land of Moab according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in the land of Moab over against Beth Peor, but no man knows his sepulchre unto this day. Okay, so Nebo, notice the mountain of Nebo. He went up from the plains of Moab at the bottom of this range of Abarim to the mountain Nebo. Now there's the top of Pisgah, one of the peaks, the highest peak, which is across from Jericho. Now, Gilead and Dan. It's quite a distance to Dan from there. So, perhaps the Lord raised him up off the peak where he could get a better look, or he saw, or he gave him a vision. I mean, we could see it today through the internet or television or whatever. Something similar the Lord could have done without the device. He doesn't need a device like we do to do such a thing. I remember Naphtali, Ephraim, Manasseh, all in the middle. Okay, land of Judah in the south. Oh, Dan's all the way to the north, by the way. All right, land of Gilead, remember, is on the east side of the Jordan. And Dan all the way to the north. Now, all the way to the south, all the way to the utmost sea, all the way over to the Mediterranean Sea, all the way to the south, as far south it went, which is the brook of Egypt we looked at. Then the plain of the valley of Jericho, that's on the west side, unto Zoar back on the east side. So you show them the entire promised land, including, this is all the land this is all the land they're going to be conquering under Joshua. But as we saw earlier, it also includes land to the east and so on and so forth that they have not conquered yet, but will when Messiah reigns. And how we know? Because this is the land I will give it to your seed. Why? Because he promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And we looked to those covenants they all had conditions. And God, when they did their part, then God did his part. In fact, we'll look at another one of those next week, okay? And we'll see the condition. All the promises of God are well, first of all, they're generally covenants, really, because they're all conditional. And a covenant requires something of both parties. They did their part. Everything he told them to do, they did their part. And their part, and his promise to them was to give that land to their descendants. So God has sown him that land. So now Moses has died in the land there. Notice the land of Moab. Well, why Moab? Why is it called the land of Moab? Because the Amorites taken half of Moab, the western half from the Moabites, and then the Israelites conquered the land, conquered it from the Amorites. Okay, so he dies there, and buried him in a valley in Moab, over against Beth Peor, the house of Peor, that area where Israel had failed again with the harlots. Okay, but no man knows where that is. Now I want to bring this up about he buried him. Remember it's in English, in Hebrew as well, other languages. When we say a king did such and such, we'll say, King David built this highway. Solomon built the temple. We don't mean Solomon went out there with a chisel, was out there, was out there, by himself, moved all the bricks and, bricks and did everything himself. We mean he commissioned it. And in Greek actually has a tense to cover this. Okay. You did something, but not under your own authority. All right. Well, so this is the ideal here. Now, we can be certain of this because of Jude, that God himself did not do the burying. And here's what we read in Jude 1:9. Chapter 1, the only chapter is verse 9. Yet Michael, the archangel, continuing with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses, durst not bring an railing accusation against him, but said, the Lord rebuke you. Michael is the one that did the actual burying, the archangel. And Satan contending, didn't want Moses buried. Well, why is that? The same reason that no one knows where God didn't want him to know where he's buried at. Because Satan wanted the people to use Moses' bones in worship, okay? Like relics in the Catholic Church, they say that, this, like St. Andrews in Scotland's named that because supposedly part of one of the bones from St. Andrew's hand got transported to Scotland, and is in a church up there, St. Andrew's golf course, the most famous golf course in the world, where golf kind of started, was named after that because supposedly one of his bones is there. They literally worship the bones. Okay, I'm not making this up. You can read this. You can read this for yourself about relics. So and so's relics, and they put them in place. People would when they pray to Saint Andrew, they'll face his relics or whatever. Some of them aren't. Some of these guys are kind of chopped up, and some aren't. Okay, and they may not really be who they say anyways. But this is an ancient practice, not dissimilar from like the Chinese and the Chinese and Japanese in ancient days, Shintoism and Taoism, worshiping their ancestors. We're taking a step further; they're worshiping the bodies. And sometimes they'll even just worship at the grave. Worship at the grave, and some people will still do that to this day to some degree at the grave of Machpelah, the grave of the mothers and fathers. That really means double chambered, where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are buried, along with Sarah, Rebecca, and Leah. Okay, so he doesn't want them making a shrine and making a god out of Moses, and making a idol out of Moses' burial place or his body. And that was Satan's scheme. Why he contended with Michael about the body. He wanted the body himself for those very purposes. And Michael just said, "The Lord rebuke you," and then he had to leave. He didn't get in a fight with him or anything. He didn't bring a railing accusation against him. Say like people, you lying, filthy, filthy lying piece of garbage. Whatever, nothing like that. Just the Lord rebuke you. And then again, that was it. But that is what. So Moses, because we don't want yes, we should respect Moses. We should respect God, the way God used him. What a great man of God he was. But we must be careful not to worship Moses, as people have done to this day. They've elevated him. Some people have elevated Moses to a place of God, or a place where Messiah should be. And we can do that with other people too, by the way. And they may not even ask for it. That was kind of what was going on in Corinth when they said one said I'm of Paul, one of them Apollos, another Peter, and another one said I'm of Christ. One group got it right. Okay, Paul himself saying so. Okay, so we don't want to. Yes, we can respect men of God, recognize them, as God used them, recognize them as worshiping, as being men who did what was right in God's eyes and so on. But we must not put them in the place of God. Okay, now continue on in Deuteronomy 34 through 7 through 8. We read another interesting fact about Moses when he dies. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were not dim, and his natural force abated, nor his natural force abated. The children of Moses wept. The children of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days. So the days and the weeping of and mourning for Moses were ended. Okay, notice he dies in full strength. He said he couldn't go in and go out anymore, not because he was weak and couldn't manage the fighting anymore, but because God had said that's as far as you're going. The world will tell you you get older, your eyesight's got to start going and so on and so forth. And it does happen with most people, but it doesn't have to be that way. This is not natural. This is supernatural. Moses' eyesight was just as good when he died as the day when he was born, or a young man. His body strength was not gone, like we saw about that blessing of Asher. Even their old age, a strong body. Okay, his was not gone at all. He died in full strength. He didn't die from sickness and disease. He died because this is the way the Bible says death works. Your spirit leaves your body, then your body dies because it didn't have the spirit in it. God just simply took Moses' spirit out of his body. Now, notice again, they wept for him. How long? Only 30 days. The most humans ever sanctioned to wait for someone in the Bible, mourn for someone in the Bible. Now Isaac doesn't say how long, but it was several years. While it's not quite a sin like the rabbis teach to mourn, excessive mourning, it can lead to sin, as we discussed with Isaac, because you're neglecting other people. When you're in mourning, you can't do the things you usually do, and you're neglecting other people. Okay, during that time. Now you can put some things off for a while, but eventually you're not really being able to love people the way you should, because you're so wrapped up in yourself and your hurt and what your loss and so on and so forth. So 30 days is the limit. Okay, we'll say it this way: the Bible sanctioned limit. Okay, and that's what they do. They mourn for 30 days. And as they're weeping the whole time, and that's the limit. They wept for him the maximum limit, because again, he was such a great man to them, even though they were not great people to him. Now let's continue on in Mark 15, verse 37 through 39. And Jesus cried with a loud voice and gave up the ghost. And the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom. And when the centurion which stood over him so cried out, gave up the ghost, said, truly, this man was the Son of God. Notice Messiah also died in full strength. He cried with a loud voice. It wasn't just the veil of the temple that convinced the centurion he was the Son of God. It was an earthquake, and some things showing perhaps so that it was rent from the top to the bottom because the top beam broke, and perhaps it occurred that way. But the centurion, he saw him die in full strength. He cried with a loud voice. You look at other place where he cried in a loud voice. He was he was going around quite strong at the time. And this convinced the centurion he was the Son of God, that he was who he said he was. The centurion was he's a guard. His job is to execute criminals. He's quite used to seeing people die, and probably crucified quite a number. And this is not the way it goes. People are supposed to get weaker and weaker and gasping for air, and at their end they cannot breathe, much less cry out. Messiah died in full strength because he laid down his life. Remember, he said, "Unto your spirit and your hand I commend my spirit." When the spirit left his body died. He died in full strength. And this is brought out some more here in Mark 15, or Makaba, if you prefer, 43 through 44. Marcus is what it is in Greek, which is actually a Latin name. All right. Joseph of Arimathea, an honorable counsel, which awaited for the kingdom of God, came with him boldly in the Pilate and craved the body of Jesus. And Pilate marveled if he was already dead. And calling in the centurion, he asked where he had been any a while dead. Messiah laid down his life. He gave it up. When he said, "I commend your spirit," God took his spirit out. He died in full strength. And this was not natural. Pilate did not expect him to die after 6 hours' time. In the rebellion of Spartacus, where they crucified all the followers of Spartacus, one of them took 10 days to die. It wasn't uncommon. It rained and got water and whatever. It wasn't uncommon for them to take 2 or 3 days to die. Remember, the thieves on the sides, they had to break their legs so they wouldn't be still hanging there suffering on Passover, on the day of the feast, Passover. So, Messiah died. Moses, or like Messiah, I should say, Moses died in full strength. God took his spirit out of his body. He did not have to die from sickness. You do not have to die from sickness and disease. Your eyes do not have to get weak. I'm not saying nobody's will. I'm just saying they don't have to. God can sustain you and keep you strong all the days of your life, like the blessing on Asher, like happened with Moses and happened with Messiah. And just simply take your spirit out of your body, then your body will die because the spirit's not in it. And lastly, and we see that, and we see this, the picture. Okay, and we see that Moses is a picture of Messiah. Here we look at the last portion about the death of Moses. The very last thing the Lord has to say about it. The Lord said unto me, "They have spoken well that which they have spoken." All right, we're in Deuteronomy 18 right now. I'm sorry, verse 17 through 19, part of Moses' big speech. The Lord said to me, "They are well which they have spoken. I'll raise up to them a prophet from their brethren like unto me. I will put my words in his mouth. He shall speak in them all that I command him. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall not hearken to my words, he speaks in my name, I will require it of him." Okay, so Lord's made a prophet like unto Moses. And as I'm going to put my words in his mouth, he's only going to say what I tell him to say. And because that, the words he speaks are his words, Yahweh, the Lord, the Tetragrammaton, Yahweh, Yahuwah, however you wish, because we don't really know, we can't know for certain how to pronounce it. Messiah knew, of course, spoke in his name. And whoever does not do that is going to require to them. Whoever does not, I'm going to raise up a prophet like unto Moses, and you must obey him, is what God is saying. Well, Who is this prophet like unto Moses? What does the death of Moses tell us about him? In Deuteronomy 34, I wasn't necessary, but anyways. Deuteronomy 34, verse 9 through 12, read the following. Yahshua, the son of Nun, was full of the spirit of wisdom. For Moses laid hands upon the children of Israel, hearkened him as and did as the Lord commanded Moses. And there rose up not a prophet in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, or since in Israel. In all signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do in the land of Egypt to Pharaoh, to all his servants, and to all his land, in that mighty hand, a great terror which Moses showed in the sight of all of Israel. Okay. Yeshua, Jesus. Same Hebrew word. Son of Nun, now in Hebrew, in English, it makes it sound like he didn't have a father. And again, he had an earthly father. God was his father. Joseph was his father by acting as a father to him, but he didn't beget him. Okay, so a little pun there that kind of plays in with English, perhaps not in any other language. But the son of he's full of the spirit of wisdom, and we see that Messiah in Luke 4, I think it's 4:18. Where he's quoting Isaiah about himself and says, full of the spirit of wisdom. So this the successor of Moses is named Yahshua. Now, as of the time of this was compiled, we know this is way after Moses died. Okay, we know this is after this is passed down, written down. Moses wrote all these things down. We know from Scripture it actually is compiled later. There was not a prophet like unto Moses who knew the Lord face to face. So there's not a prophet like unto Moses throughout the entire Old Testament. And you can verify this by looking at all of them. None of them knew the Lord face to face. He spoke to them in signs and wonders, and so on and so forth. He said he would do that, but it was not so with his servant Moses. Moses speak directly to. Well, Moses had said another prophet would be like unto him that God would speak directly to. We must listen to him. And Moses brought deliverance and also great terror in all the sight of Israel. So this other prophet like unto Moses must also bring great deliverance and great terror to everyone, well, everyone who opposes God, really. And there's no mystery who this is. We read here in Acts 3, verse 19 through 22, the identity of this prophet like unto Moses is confirmed. Repent you therefore, and be converted, that your sins may be blotted out when times of refreshing come from the presence of the Lord. He shall send Jesus Christ, which before preached unto you, whom the heaven must receive until the times of the restitution of all things that God has spoken by the mouth of his holy prophets since the world began. For Moses truly said unto the fathers, a prophet shall the Lord your God raise up your like unto your brethren, like unto me. Him you shall hear in all things whatsoever I say to you. And Peter, if I went on one more verse, says, he will destroy whoever among the people who does not listen to him. Notice this is not optional. Okay? This that prophet like unto Moses is Yahshua HaMashiach, Hebrew. Yahshua, son of Nun, is the one Moses commissioned. The one that's greater than Moses, that prophet like unto Moses, is also Yahshua, HaMashiach. Yahshua that led him into the promised land is a picture of Yahshua who leads us into the promised land, in, in a promised land that we receive upon death, and later as we reign and rule with him. Okay, that new heaven and new earth, the ultimate promised land. And he also is a terror to everyone who opposes God. The gospel is a sweet smell of salvation to those who repent and accept it, but the stench of death to those who reject it. He will judge all people. His resurrection is the assurance of that, it says in Acts 17. He is that prophet like unto Moses. And as we saw, he had a death similar to Moses. And like Moses, you can't even go to his grave. That's all we have for this week. Until next week, shalom.